I'm joined here today by the Cage Warriors lightweight champion, of course, talking about Mason Jones, coming off the big win at Cage Warriors 113. Thanks so much for joining me, man. How are you?
Very good. Obviously, it's bit of a crazy time at the moment. Everyone in lockdown. I've literally popped my girlfriend over to Asda to pick us up some food, and heading straight back to lockdown and staying safe and isolated.
Sounds good. Where are you currently at in the world? I assume you're in Wales?
Yeah, back in the home country of Wales. Yeah, so I fought in Manchester. Manchester was 4 hours away from us. We stayed in an apartment, and then we drove straight back the next day, and been back home since.
And so were you worried at all about getting back home? Because we know it was starting to get complicated at that point.
Yeah, obviously there was always the risk that Friday night they was going to go into lockdown. They obviously was a bit lenient and let us have a few more days of freedom. Then, same as they've done in the rest of the countries in Europe, they locked us down now. So uh, it worked out perfect timing wise for me. But yeah, it was a risk, especially for my family at certain points because they didn't know what was going to happen. Obviously, they weren't allowed to watch the venue, but they were still coming up. And they were there so straight afterwards. They'd see me and see the belt. So it was sort of in the back of everyone's heads when was panicking, thinking, well, what happens if they lock us down? And are they going to stop us from going home? Or are they going to want us to go straight home? Like, we didn't know what was happening.
And so now in order for you to leave your house, do you have like a paper you have to sign, a document you have to fill out saying why you're leaving? Or how's that kind of work for you at this point?
So it's nothing that extreme yet. I think looking at the way how relaxed people take in the situation, I think that'll obviously be coming in sort of coming into play in the next few days. But at the moment now, they've literally just said that there's no unnecessary travel. So you can drive to the supermarkets and drive home. I can do an hour of exercise in a day with yourself or your family members and else. And groups of less than two, obviously, they're not in the congregation, but certain workforces are still working, just keeping social distancing in play. But I know there's a lot of unmarked police cars pulling people over and asking people where they've been and why they're out on the roads, and they're sort of they crack down on it. But unless the army help our police and they do sort of make the make it more severe, I really don't think people are going to listen to my obviously where I'm from small towns in Wales. People are listening, but there's certain areas where people obviously they're trying to keep pubs open. They're still trying to go out, and London apparently is bad. The supermarkets around here, like there's people queuing in supermarkets, and there's hundreds of people, and it just doesn't make sense. It just people sort of still haven't grasp the severity of it, and until people start losing relatives and friends, I don't think people will, to be honest.
So I assume for you things are going to get real complicated training wise. I'm sure you're going to take some time to recover and everything, but with only an hour of exercise, how are you going to manage training?
Well, this is the question. So the other thing is no more. There's no groups bigger than two people. So um, I'm gonna take. I was planning on taking a few days off anyway. I'd had some weeks back to back, and I'd been pushing quite hard. So I was planning on taking a few days off. I was hoping, obviously, to have till Wednesday off, and I was hoping to go back. Well, with all this now, I'm not too sure what's going to happen. So my boxing coach, he can still do one-on-one practices as long as uh, we meet up and it's one-on-one, and there's not really too much of an issue for that. The rest of my classes are all cancelled at the moment, so I really don't know what's going to happen. And there's a June card in Cardiff on June the 12th, which I would love to have defended my title there. But if lockdown lasts more than 3 weeks, then that's going to be impossible. There's no way I'm going to take a title fight on less than 6 weeks' notice. And if obviously they keep the lockdown for longer than 3 weeks, and that starts eating into an 8-week camp, and obviously everyone has to get back to normal a bit first before I can make sure all the gyms, because one of my sparring partners, his son has a autoimmune disease problem, and he obviously is in isolation. He's not going to risk it with anyone, risk his son's life. So this is going to be a lot of situations like that where a lot of training partners are going to be obviously their parents, their kids, or their brothers and sisters, or etc. are going to be at risk, and it's going to be a hard time. So I was speaking to one of the matchmakers from Cage Warriors today, and they really don't know what's going to happen. Whether they go ahead with closed shows or whether they isolate and wait, or I think everyone just is sort of do what you're told and wait situation. Hopefully, if everyone starts listening and everyone starts coming together and stop being selfish, I think all the situations can get sorted and everyone can get back to work and everyone can stay healthy. Because I think at the minute they're still just sort of they're taking it for granted.
And so, what was it like for you leading into the fight the last couple of weeks? Because we're not sure if the event's going to continue. There's a lot of criticism. You have an opponent pull out. You have all this stuff happening. What was it like for you mentally?
Well, I had two opponents pull out.
Yeah.
So leading up, 2 weeks out, I had a call that said that my opponent's pulled. He had medical issues, which we didn't really want to know too many details of. Obviously, it was a private, and we didn't worry too much. As soon as he's out, he's out. We don't need to know anything else. So he pulled out. I'm hoping he's resting up and recovering, and I hope everything's good with him, with Danilo. Then they found me a French replacement. That lasted a week, and then they called me a week before the fight and literally said, look, he's pulled out, his eye infection's still severe, it's not going to be in time, so we're going to have to find you an opponent. And then for me, Joe, and I took the fight in 15 minutes and said, look, I don't care, just find me an opponent, I'll fight. And they offered the belt, and that was that. So to be honest with me, I don't really worry too much. So I always cage warriors as sort of like the college or my schooling before you end up going into a proper job or sort of thing, because when it comes to UFC, you could have a pull-out and they could find your replacement who could be an up-and-coming prospect who's literally destroying everyone, and they could be like, look, there's your fight, take it or leave it. And you just have to be prepared to fight anyone on any time's notice, and you just have to be ready. So I don't really worry too much about the opponents and the whole thing where it was going to be in a closed event. And I fought on quiet stages more. I fought on small door arenas. I fought on judo competitions where it's literally just been me, my coach, my opponent, the judge, the referees, and my coach is wearing a suit, and it's all televised, but everything's quite quiet. And I fought in weirder situations and it doesn't really bother me as long as I have an opponent in front of me and I have my coaches there. I'll fight anyone and I'll fight anywhere. So it was a good experience. I think as a learning experience, it was perfect for sort of the future, and it'll prepare me for moving forwards. And my game plan went perfect, and I had the result I wanted.
And obviously you did, because you go out there, you get the first round TKO. Afterwards, you become champion. But how do you look back at your performance in that fight?
So I'm hypercritical when it comes to my performance. I've always been the same. Hypercritical. I think that if you criticize your performance and you pick on everything, then you're always improving. If you look at a performance, and that's probably my only performance. So I look back on my coach has been like, look, there was you did nearly everything correctly, and I'm like, yeah, but I sit in the pocket a bit too much with him and traded a few times. I was slow starting. My kicking range for anything anything above the waist up, my kicking range was completely wrong. I couldn't find my range very well. The wrestling exchanges I was happy with. I made sure I controlled his arms so I could use up a body, and I didn't really want to take him down. Most of the things I was doing was to keep him destabilized and keep him not sure what was going to happen while I worked the body. And so the main three I'm taking from it was, obviously I was still a bit slow starting. I stayed in range too long, and my kicking distance was out. But apart from that, I'm quite happy. So I'm going to go back as soon as I can get back training with my coaches and work on my kick distances, and obviously just incorporate that a bit more. I think that was just an off day for me, to be honest, when it came to my kicking wise. I'm going to work a bit more on my flexibility because I felt a little bit tight around my hip flexors and my knees. And I'm just going to keep sparring, working, and improve again for my next fight, whenever that's going to be. But obviously it all depends on when we're allowed to go back training and when everything's allowed to happen. So I'm just going to treat this as a holiday. Like, the weather is really good here. I think you can see it's window. We walked the dog up. Me and my girlfriend walked the dog up from the house around the lakes, and my top off, and it was lovely. And I got a bit of a belly now from post-fight eating. So from being the best shape of my life to having a bit of a pudding and gut again. So it's nice to enjoy some food and have a few days off holiday, and we'll see. Do you know what I mean? I'll just see what the future happens and see what's next.
And a lot of people, they were criticizing the fact that you guys are obviously the title fight, you're the co-main, and then the main event is, for a lot of people, a UFC prelim. I mean, did you agree with that? Did you think any sort of way about that, or did it not matter for you?
I was happy the UFC was on. I was to be honest, I would have preferred if they might get more of the UFC fights on the card, because like those are the guys who have reached the target where we want to be. And if they could have got more bouts card, my bout would have been on earlier, and in the end I could have got the fight done and gone to see my family and celebrated with them a bit earlier. That's the way I look at it. Like those guys, they've already qualified for UFC. They've already moved on. Like they're at the sort of, they're above me, and they have more than any right to be on the card above me. And it was really nice to see their fight, and to see that obviously managed to get these guys a fight, because at the end of the day, if Cage Warriors hadn't got them, those guys wouldn't have been paid. And I've got friends who were meant to be fighting on the London card, and none of those got paid. And where the UFC do come out eventually, like, it's unsure times for us all, but I know there's certain guys who could have really used a paycheck, especially during these times. So the fact that they got a fight is good news for me. Like, it doesn't matter what order I fight in, it doesn't matter who's above me, who's below me. I can go in there and concentrate on myself. And like I said, it was just nice to see those guys got a performance.
And so, of course, Cage Warriors was one of the only events, obviously the biggest one of the weekend, that was still happening sporting-wise. You know, people had their opinions on that. As one of the fighters on your card, what was your opinion on them continuing with the event despite everything else shutting down?
So when they first said it was going to be a closed-door card, I didn't understand what they was going to do. And obviously, with all these medical issues, there was queries about, is this the safest thing to do? Should you still be going ahead? And then all I want to ensure everyone is there was physically no way they could make the show safer. So we took the weigh-ins. We were kept in the hotel. We were told we wouldn't they asked us as nicely as possible not to leave the hotel. They said, we don't want you wandering in Manchester. We want you indoors. We want you minimum contact as possible. Everything's provided for you. You don't need anything, so please don't leave. We went to weigh-ins. Our weigh groups was broken up. Normally they have one big weigh-in. That was broken 3 groups, so that there was no necessary contact. Everyone was sort of kept away from each other. Laid us in. We were shown straight to a doctor who temperature checks for symptoms for corona, and straight from there, then they sent back and they said, look, be here at 3 o'clock to get a lift to the venue, or make your own way. And they asked to check in at certain times. We got to the venue. When I drove into the venue, my dad was driving. My dad wasn't allowed in. They was like, look, you can't come in any further. You have to drop him here because your name's not on the sheet. So he dropped me and my coaches. We walked in. There was another checkpoint inside with security there. They checked our name off. They should give us all yellow bands. And then we weren't allowed to wander around the venue on our own. We were taken from there straight to a doctor again who corona tested us. We were then given a meeting, the normal health meeting, and we were told, there's no wandering around the venue. There's no moving from your change rooms. It was like, come back at 7 o'clock. If you're on the main card, you were escorted straight to your change rooms, and then you're not to leave. That's you done until you fight. So we come back. We went through all security again. We got corona tested again for symptoms. Obviously, there's no testing kits out yet, so all they was doing was checking out temperatures and sort of giving us a general test to make sure that obviously we weren't showing symptoms. And then they took us from there. Then they took us to our change rooms, like I said. As soon as you fought, then they asked you to go see the doctor straight away, minimum media, and then they were literally taking us straight out. As soon as your fight's done, they said, look, we don't want you waiting around, we want you gone straight back to your hotels. They want minimum people as possible. So I don't really see how they could have made it any sort of they could have made it better for us at all. Like, it was minimum staff, minimum this, minimum everything, like minimum contact. It's been 4 days. I've got no symptoms. My coach has got no symptoms. I don't think anyone on the card has sort of said they've got symptoms. So we sort of managed to come out of it in one piece, and the show went ahead, and the show ran wonderfully. So I think it was a success for Cage Warriors.
All right, and I have just one last question, kind of a 2-part question. When do you think realistically we'll be able to see you back out there in the cage again? And you are the champion, so you're not really the one calling anybody out, but ideally, who would you want next?
So I'm hoping, when I say hoping, obviously it's loosely, because I want everyone to be safe and stay safe, and I want everyone to be healthy. I don't want any unnecessary injuries or deaths, because obviously Cage Warriors rushes back. So as long as Cage Warriors get the all clear and this virus clears up enough that we can start running the shows, then I'm hoping that Cage Warriors in Cardiff, June, will go ahead. That's a home card for me, so I'm hoping I can get a full sort of full audience behind me, and I know there's hundreds of people who've missed my title fight who would love to come and see me defend in June. So that would be lovely. There's more than enough time. As long as it's locked up in 3 weeks, I'll have 8 weeks at camp training to get back to, which is plenty of time. As the opponent, I'm not really worried about it. Like, I would love to fight a UFC veteran. Danilo would have been a UFC veteran for me, so it's nice just to fight someone who's made that level, just to show that you can. Do you mean that I'm beating these guys, better than these guys, and I'm more than ready for the UFC call up? But if they want me to fight a challenger, I'll fight a challenger. If they want me to fight the UFC veteran, I'll fight a UFC veteran. If they want me to fight fighters in UFC, I'll fight fighters in UFC. I don't worry about the opponent. It doesn't matter who it is. I'm training to beat people like Khabib, Dustin Poirier, Tony Phipps, and these are the guys I want to be fighting. So, or Justin Gaethje's another one. I'd love to fight Justin Gaethje. So these are the guys I want to fight, and where I get a call up for UFC, whether I defend in June, whether I fight in Cage Warriors for the next 2 years, it doesn't matter to me. Just keep finding me opponent, and I'll just keep smashing people up.
All right, we look forward to seeing what's next for you. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it, and congratulations on becoming the champion.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on. I love doing these, and I love getting asked to do an interview. So whenever you want to do an interview again, if you drop me a message, I'm always keen.